folks. You're with Tacitus today. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the riots, the recent yesterday and day before, the riots in the United States, where Antifa were the big shaker movers on that front, allegedly kicked off by the death of a black man at the hands of all black police. Let me repeat that, all black police, not a white guy in sight, and how this is setting off rioting and hyperbolic carry on in the media and so on. It's being framed as a race issue. I'm not really sure how, but it is. Now, all the facts, as I understand them, at least, are not out yet. The police response seems to be out of all proportion to just some random stop of a random citizen. There would appear to be more to the story than this, and it couldn't be racism because all the people involved are black. So it's not that. Now, as the bits that I am aware of is that the police attempted to stop a driver for some infraction or infringement. The driver sped off. They chased and caught the driver. There was then a struggle. Then the driver, the black man, ran away. He was later caught, and as a result, there was a struggle and a beating that went on, and as a result of the injuries incurred during that beating, he later died, as I understand it. So now, what do you see, and what do I see, and what does the guy around the corner see when I hear of these things and see the footage? Do I jump to racism or institutional this or evil that or so on? So no, my concern is, why wasn't police procedure properly followed? Why wasn't the policies and procedures of the police followed to the letter? Now, they can't include kicking and punching people, unless there's a struggle on the spot, which didn't appear to be there, or certainly not to an extent that would warrant those sort of the kicking and so on, even when the guy was down. So why wasn't police procedure followed? What sort of training are these people getting where they would even contemplate thinking or behaving that way? And they must all at least be sufficiently aware that the consequences, because they've got like body cam and all that sort of stuff, they know that some of it's going to be available and come out in the public domain. So one assumes that they were aware that they were they weren't following the proper protocols here. So that's my concern there. So straight away, why wasn't this police procedure being followed? What disciplinary measures are in place for police that don't follow procedure? What possibly would have caused them to even contemplate that sort of behaviour, and what sort of training do they receive? Now, it's the case all over the United States that a lot of white police officers have quit. Or if they stayed on the job, they pretty much flatly refused to go into areas where there's a predominantly black population, and pretty much refused to stop or arrest black lawbreakers or suspects even, unless there's at least two other black officers present. So this is very, so white officers have left and have been pretty much invited to leave, I think, in a lot of jurisdictions. This has meant that the proportion of black officers is now probably higher than it's ever been, given how many white officers have quit the force. Now, on top of that, white officers are not that interested in joining the police. When you're laying your life on the line and you run the risk of spending 20 years in prison because you offended some black activist. And for $50,000 a year, I mean, gee whiz. So most white people aren't looking at this as a first career choice, far from it. Whereas it may be an attractive career prospect for a lot of black people, but the standards to order to get officers into the police force, the standards have been considerably lowered all over the Western world, really, to attract more black officers into the force. So there's intellectually and this idea of public service and all this sort of thing is something that isn't seen quite as readily by those black officers as maybe by some of the white officers. Not that the white officers are perfect, by the way, but it means the sense of public service, to protect and to serve, all that sort of stuff. That's severely diminished and is now probably less than it's ever been. And there's a higher proportion of I would assert, low quality police officers, and in many jurisdictions, our majority of black officers. So so it's hardly a racist institution at this point. Now, the second level that the activists point to, say, well, okay, black officers did all the, it's only black people, no white people in sight. The sergeant on the desk is black, the police commissioner is black, affirmative action all the way through. There's black officers everywhere, barely a white officer in sight. So, but the institution of policing is white. So even though there's no white people, the institution is white. Well, hey, hold on a minute. How can the institution be white, for goodness sakes? If there's black police officers and the black commissioner? Well, it's because black people are disproportionately running into trouble with the law, and that's part of the overall cycle of oppression that stems from slavery. Slavery was a white person's gig, which it wasn't, by the way. It's an outrageous lie. Slavery was operated by black and brown people for thousands of years before the white folk showed up. But nonetheless, so we're going to say slavery is a white thing. So therefore, the police, given that they disproportionately arrest and imprison black people, therefore that is an extension of the white system. Therefore, if black people work in the police, or even if black people can do the arresting and the senior officers are black and so on, that doesn't matter because the institution's white. Now, using that logic and rationale, you could say anything. You could say, well, the Arabs were the first people to create a police force thousands of years BC. What would be tantamount to a police force. Therefore, all police forces are Arab. Therefore, all Arabs are oppressors of. You could go down that logic as well. But anyway, so they require. It needs a lot of mental gymnastics, of course, to constantly arrive at the we're oppressed and white people did it. But that's the fixed narrative, and they'll jump around and do the somersaulting or any amount of somersaulting is necessary to arrive back at that point. It's those damn white fucking fascist fucking Nazis did it. So, and that's how it's how they're showing it up here. Now, in terms of the rioters, the Antifa here, this is the sort of the next area that would concern me. The rule of law. Now, the rule of law is that everyone is treated under the law equally. So if you're going to grab some sort of traffic offender and again, we don't know the rest of the story here, but and beat them to the point where they die of their injuries, then you would theoretically have to treat everybody that way, which would, of course, be rather unfortunate. But the reality is that if proper police procedure and policy and the rule of law is applied, then the punishment for that offender being he ran away from arrest or ran away from a traffic stop, the punishment is to be determined in a court of law, in an independent court of law. And you bring the police can bring the evidence to the court and to the judge and say, look, this person ran off and they resisted arrest and they did this and they did that. And you bring that forward as evidence with the body cam footage, which would have been there. And then it's a judge to decide what that punishment should be, whether it should be fines or good behavior or suspended sentence or indeed detention. Now, that's how it works. Now, and then the next step of that is due legal process, where the police don't attempt to embellish it or invent evidence and any lies that are told by the accused can be proven to be so, and then they can face additional charges for perjury under oath and so on. So that's how the matter is to be dealt with. Now, whenever the state moves away from that model, then we're all every one of us, every single one of us is in trouble. And the only question we need to ask is, how much trouble and for how long, and how much will it decay and destroy our society? Those are the questions there. So that's what I see, and that's what I think about, and that's what concerns me when I see anyone, whoever it might have been, that was getting beaten. The fact it's a black person is irrelevant. The thing is the rule of law, police procedure, proper police procedure, due legal process in court, tested evidence in a court of law, an independent, not some activist bullshit court, but an independent court of law. And that's it. Now, we should all be concerned when any of those things aren't functioning to the optimum. And at the moment, across the Western world, particularly the United States or parts of it, it's not functioning. None of those things are properly functioning, and that should always be, I believe, our concern. Now let's come to the riots, Antifa and the the goons that hang around them and inject themselves into the mayhem. There seem to be plenty of those. And I would, I'd almost put money on that FBI Asian provocateurs are operating in there. Now, yeah, the Antifa rioters committing all sorts of damage and beatings and murders in some cases. There seems to be a great reluctance by the state to bring them to court. So again, the rule of law is not operating. If it's illegal and someone's going to get 12 months in prison for simply photographing, the Parliament House on January 6th, the Congress on January 6th, and they get 12 months in prison for some sort of abstract treason law or some bullshit, then why does someone that burns a building down or beats someone up or riots and goes out with the sole purpose of rioting and spreading mayhem? Why aren't they in prison? Why are they so easily let go? Why does the state, the Department of Prosecution, drop their cases against these Antifa hoods? Why are they bailed out? Why do they get free legal aid when the January 6th people don't? And so on and so forth. So the rule of law is not being applied. It's being applied rigorously and brutally to one group of people, but is being applied hardly at all to another, the Antifa thugs. So effectively, the Antifa thugs and any of those rioters that are around that, they've become extensions of the globalist project. They're there to spread the disharmony and the social division and to make the West ungovernable, or to give it the appearance of being ungovernable. And that's their role. And they're the shock troops, if you like, of the globalist project. And they're not being treated equally under the law. So what we have here isn't an issue of racism at all, far from it. This idea that cops, white or black, or anyone is running around killing black people is utterly absurd. Sure, the globalist controlled media pretend it's a big issue and it's happening everywhere, all over the place, and thousands, if not millions, of blacks are being shot every 5 minutes by police, but that's simply nonsense. And easily can be proved to not be so. But what is of great concern is this rule of law is not being applied. There's a complete breakdown there. There's the police procedure issue and the discipline, the training. That's clearly an issue that needs to be addressed. And I think it's getting worse and it's not being addressed. And then we've got the issue of due legal process, and of course the Department of Prosecutions, choosing to being very cherry picking the cases. Are you a Trump voter? Well, we're taking you to court, motherfucker. Are you a pro-globalist? Yeah, no, you're okay. Did you burn a building down? Who cares? Insurance will cover it. So we're looking at very different standards of law and justice and application, and that's the real issue. And we have to, I believe, all of us have to insist that the issue isn't racism. It isn't anything. It's the rule of law and due legal process. Now, if we put all our energies, every fibre of ourselves and energies into protecting that due legal process, the rule of law, protecting that, then it effectively is a break against the globalists. It really gets in the way of the globalists. That the Antifa guys can't operate. There's a whole lot of things. They can't just put you in prison because you took photographs of the Congress building on January 6th. When due legal process and the rule of law is applied and upheld, upheld, then it is very hard for any state to attack its own citizens. In fact, out of all things, Bill of Rights, all that sort of stuff, that's fine and that's good, and we need those things. But the biggest protection to us as citizens, the biggest protection is the rule of law and due legal process. So when you see any of these things going on, that's what you should do. And you should demand that your elected representatives, your congressmen and so on, focus on that. You want to see bills going through the House of Representatives and through the Senate that protects that and makes any office holder accountable for protecting the citizens under due legal process and the rule of law. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.